On this segment, we're going to talk about the death of newspapers. And our guest is Justin Wheeler. You know, Justin, the death of newspapers has been predicted for quite a while with the coming of the internet and all the information that's coming on there. Is it, I mean, you know, I still feel a need for the printed word. You know, it's nice to get something in the mail as opposed to doing everything on the internet. You're saying that I'm just kind of stuck in the mud there?
Well, first of all, George, I got to say it's a great honor to be on the show. I've been a lot of camera work, but now it's great to be in front of the camera here too.
Okay.
I guess I would classify it not so much as a death of newspapers as a change in their role. Because like you said, there are going to be people that always want to have the hard copy in their hands to read, and there will be some that access it online. Now that's more New York Times, more big papers like that than we're seeing Journal Times. But I think that yes, newspapers will always be around in some way, but the thing is we're going to see a lot of newspapers that are the size of, say, the Journal Times, Kenosha News, stuff like that. They're going to have harder and harder time competing. So do you receive the Journal Times in hard copy still?
I still get the Journal Times in a hard copy, and I also I do advertising there.
Okay.
Because it's a very, very good place to advertise apartments for rent.
Right.
The classified ad. And I've tried the online stuff, you know, with Craigslist and things like that, but it just doesn't work nearly as well as the Journal Times. Right. Now, classified is a very small part of the newspaper, and I don't think it gets an awful lot of income from there. So that is, they're not going to be able to rely on a classified ads, particularly for apartments for rent. So they're going to, you know, but that's my use of it, and I hope it sticks around for a while because it sure works for me.
Right, it's not sustainable to just go off of classifieds alone. And do you ever advertise with the Journal Times' website specifically, or is it more just print ads?
Just the print ads, right.
And I mean, that's the problem, is a lot of businesses say, okay, I'll still advertise with the Journal Times or with the Milwaukee paper or wherever else, and they advertise just online. And newspapers can't get nearly as much money for ads on the internet or on mobile devices as they can for old ads in the print. So even though subscriber rates go down, that really doesn't hurt papers as much as some people think. It's really more about the ad dollars going way down, as far as people still advertising with them sometimes, but so much on the internet that they're getting 5 cents for an ad rather than $5 for that print ad that they used to get on that rate. So,
well, what's with the Sunday newspaper? I mean, the Sunday newspaper is just huge, and it's just full of this 3-color advertising. I mean, Menards and Kohl's are still advertising there.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the Sunday papers do have a lot of ads. You're right. I mean, my parents still receive the Journal Times, and I'll stop in on Sunday and check out the paper. And yeah, there are a lot of ads, and I've noticed that there's more ads and just less and less stories, less and less actual interesting investigative journalism to read. And I think that's where you're seeing them. They're still getting some print ads, but where they're making the cuts is in a lot of those. I mean, they didn't do a ton of investigative pieces, but you're seeing less and less things like that, and more just like regurgitated information rather than.
Well, you had mentioned that too, that the Journal Times is unable to do investigative reporting anymore,
right.
Or tell me. But is that because of the lack of money? Is what you're saying?
I would say yes, because I think you know, the Journal Times has fantastic staff. They have some good writers. They have some good editors, and all the way up the chain. But the problem is they simply don't have the money to devote time to having a reporter, photojournalist go out and research a story for a whole week. And those stories that you find where something is really unearthed is not a story that has 2 hours spent on it. It has a process to it. You know, you go out and you get the basic data and you do some more research, and then you have to start coming up with interesting questions and stuff like that to dig for real answers and stories. And the Journal, you know, at this point, it's just, you know, I think they're down to 1 or 2 government reporters, and that's it. So, I mean, there's no way for that government reporter to get all the information out there in the story and question it in a way that's meaningful for people to read.
I have observed that, of the Journal Times. They they have reporters covering it.
Yeah.
But unless you're really, like you say, unless you're getting interested in the story and you want to dig into some questions and find some more background information on it, you're really not doing investigative reporting.
Right.
You know, the famous one was the Richard Nixon investigation, and you just don't see the Journal Times reporters doing that at all. They'll ask a little bit of information, but it's more or less you know, the explanation of what you
The
said.
details,
you know,
just
yeah.
the how's this going to affect people in this very basic way. And you know, I think that they're well-trained journalists, they're well-trained writers, but they know that they've been sent out at say 6 o'clock to cover a meeting, and they need to have that story done by 8. So there's no way that they're going to be able to like look into anything and say, wait a minute, this doesn't add up and stuff like that. So you don't get that in-depth story, and I think you're getting less of it in places like the Washington Post, but they're still doing it to a degree because they have a big enough budget still in some of those newspapers, but it's just not to be expected from papers at this size in the city of Racine.
Well, and I'd heard that same statement, or that same type of claim made by a talk show host in Milwaukee. He said, you know, here's the story. He said, and nobody's covering it.
Yeah.
Nobody's going and asking questions about this particular story. What gives? And what you're saying is there just isn't the time, talent, and money
Right.
to do that type of thing anymore. Now, how is any of this YouTube stuff? You know, everybody going around today has got a phone and can take pictures and
Right.
recordings of stuff.
Yeah.
Is that maybe getting into some of this investigative reporting? I mean,
Yeah, video quality is finally getting passable on mobile devices and stuff like that. People can look a little crazy whipping out their big iPad, like videotaping stuff. But yeah, and I mean, that's kind of the new breed of journalism. The problem there is that people, like you said, anyone can do it. And we've become very aware that not anyone is trained in journalism and how to really do that.
They're not trained at all. All they're doing is take a picture and put it on YouTube.
Yeah.
And if you get enough of those in, once in a while, one of them makes them sound like the Rodney King thing that's how that
Right.
became such a big story, because somebody
Yeah.
from their balcony was videoing
Yeah.
the beating, you know, and suddenly
Yeah.
it became real that the police are doing this.
Right, and I mean that there is a place for that, and I think that that's part of what you'll get with the internet, where it hurts newspapers, it helps in that area. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's enough to really replace what we've lost with newspapers not having as big of a budget, because yeah, you're getting information, you're getting a lot of it, but it's really just that muddled mass of stuff. You know, you're going to get a lot of people's tweets and a lot of misinformation, and one could make an argument that you get a lot of that from CNN and MSNBC and Fox News anyways, as they try to cover stories in a hurry. They don't always get the story right away, but we definitely can't expect someone on their YouTube page or their Twitter account to get the story right all the time, or even some of the time.
Now, just to summarize up, we haven't got much time, but you talked about the death of newspapers. You see that the Journal-Times is going to eventually go under?
I think it'll definitely lose its print function in, I don't want to make a prediction and be totally wrong, but maybe 5 to 10 years you won't see a print copy of it anymore. I think it'll exist on the internet, but it'll be a completely different kind of a thing. It'll continue to be more of a, just like, here's what happened at the meeting last night, and here's how these new cuts affect you, or here's how the new bus times affect you. You won't go to the Journal-Times to be like, what's the scoop, what's the trouble, or what's the situation right now with the city and stuff like that.
Very interesting. Thank you for that.
Something to watch.
Thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming on the show here. We're going to take a break here and then come back with Mark Polwinski, and we're going to talk a little bit about the invasion of Syria.